Welcome back to the Football Ball Podcast. It's Zach, aka Mr. Stateside, and what a week. This week in the world's most popular sport and its most competitive league, it felt more like a Hollywood script than a schedule. We saw Michael Bay-esque action movie of a game between Man City and Spurs, featuring Dominic Solanke's outrageous scorpion kick, Drew-like, but not as handsome. What a replay, though, if you haven't seen it, regardless. Absolutely beautiful kick. Not to be outdone, though, another adrenaline-pumping flick, kind of like Fast and the Furious, was channeled through Manchester United's Red Devils as they continued their win streak, 3, in their most outrageous fashion with a 90+4 winner over Fulham by the sudden star in Sesko. And finally, maybe not a film that was a fan or critic favorite, it's Arsenal's one win over Chelsea that takes them to the Cup final for hopefully an Oscar win, even as the panned reviews of Arsenal's boring approach are written in their wake. What a show we've got. Daniel's here as well. And before we leave, we'll make some predictions about the Cup final after this break.
Football. Football. Football.
All right, welcome back to the Football Ball Podcast. Zach here along with Daniel. Daniel, welcome back to the pod. How we doing?
Doing great. Just like everyone else, excited to see if the Man United fan will end up shaving his afro or not by the end of the month.
It's like you read my mind. I almost thought about saying that in the intro, like 3 wins in a row. That sounds familiar. Are there some luscious curly locks that are about to be shaved? This guy at this point almost probably doesn't want to shave his head. But yeah, it is exciting to kind of jump into Man United just real quick. Like, it is exciting. You can feel the excitement for one of the world's biggest clubs as they get some momentum against some big wins.
Yeah, to me, the really funny part about that is how I feel conscious everyone as a Man United fan was in approaching their recent success. Okay, remember when this guy took over, we've had the new manager bounces. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Let's take everything with, a cautious outlook. And then that was followed with impressive wins against Man City, Arsenal, and then the recent one against Fulham as well is now really kind of putting that emotional restraint and maturity to the test of all the Man United fans. So as a non-supporter of them, it's just fun to see that questioning of the, are we back? Are we not back? Taking another turn yet again within that fan base.
Yeah, and with fan bases this big too, you can really get whiplash from we're so back, it's so over, to take maybe an NFL term or fantasy football term, right? Like, sometimes you're feeling unstoppable. Sometimes you have full confidence, and then sometimes you don't. And gotta say, we talked about it a little bit last week, but Carrick, he has the swagger. He has the pedigree as far as a player as well. He's got that cachet with the fan base. So yeah, I'm loving it. Ride the excitement. Even at the cost of some title races, it all just brings it back down to the middle, makes it more competitive for that top 3, for that top spot. So I say it's almost like the Cowboys, or like other traditional powerhouses like the Lakers or the Boston Celtics. There are some teams you just want to see play well. You want to see get close to the precipice so you have the chance to beat them and almost be added to that history book. So I know that you've done some coaching in your day and you're still doing it. Apparently we're on the streak, and just to keep it on Man United just for a couple more seconds here, is that Michael Carrick not only has a laid-back approach, not only going to the forward and the back, right, making everything simple. Hey, guys, just play football here, right? Pass the ball, kick it in the net, make a tackle. But apparently, and I wonder how far back this one went, Daniel, Carrick scrapped the old regime's train the day after the game rule. Is rest is best the new tactical masterclass?
I think at this point for the Premier League, it's honestly whatever gets you results is the right answer. And that does seem to be different in every environment on a yearly basis. It's why you do have such high salaries for different physios and using the sports science now to try and unlock that right answer. But whatever the approach is, he seems to have really kicked the group up a notch in a way that, for me at least personally, has made me wonder how someone like Ruben Amorim might be feeling now, even after going from the little bit of the smug, wry smile that you saw immediately after his departure from the club. And I think, to his credit, put the club in a good place for an interim takeover. They weren't in a situation battling potential relegation. They were actually, I think, higher in the table than most people felt. But then having someone come over, you never know how that transition would look. And he seems to have unlocked the right thing, whether if that is giving the players a little bit of extra rest. I've got to imagine he was able to somewhat find the right motivational message to get those guys inspired again and want to show for their own self-belief as high competitive athletes that yes, we can do this, and maybe we're not quite the laughing stock that we have been presented in the last couple of seasons. And having that desire to show they were signed for their talent and their ability, and for whatever reason having someone who has given them that belief and positivity seems to unlock a much higher level and a much higher overall product than what we've seen in the Man United squad. At least in terms of the consistency piece, it's been a much different picture for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder if bringing David Beckham in, maybe to buy the club, hey, that could keep the good vibes going. At this point, I believe that Manchester United fans and almost like the team, the organization themselves, they would love to see someone come in and maybe clean up, or not even clean up, remind fans of the previous glory years. Get rid of these American owners and replace them with one of their own. In the vein of a Carrick, and give them just kind of a turning of the page moment, a refresh, if you will. Possibly bring back some of that financial boon and the advantage they used to have over these EPL teams. Have They have some sponsors and some other issues related to sponsors and kits and endorsements and partnerships. I mean, we don't even have to get into like their management group that's now in charge, but there are teams catching up to them financially. They're not going to be able to afford these high wages if the form drops off. So it'll be interesting to see how far this goes, what kind of effect that has on the rest of the league. Final thing, almost could remind some of the older soccer fans that actually saw the glory years of Man United of a certain New England Patriots team that's now back in the Super Bowl. Made about 10 Super Bowls out of 60, I believe. Man United, probably one of the greatest teams we've seen since Man City as far as run, franchise, impact, character and stature of some of these coaches and players. So while Daniel may be sitting there watching in awe and wondering when the bubble will burst, there are some tinglings and some emotions that we see when Man United is beating teams like Man City and Arsenal, much less if they pull off a big win against Tottenham on Saturday, Daniel. So, any thoughts
I
about
am
that?
glad is one last talking point for me, just the glory years that you referenced, and everyone's abundantly clear to where it almost feels like an over-discussed topic and a dead horse of just how successful that organization was in the 90s, in the 2000s, under the guidance of Sir Alex Ferguson, and just that eternal letdown of not being able to reach those heights. And more than most clubs, Man United has seen to look to find solutions of players that were a part of that environment to be able to continue to get the organization back on track when things have started to go awry. And it does feel like there have been, whether it's Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Fletcher, now Carrick, several of those kind of golden era type people brought in, but for whatever reason, and again, it's such a small sample size, but what an impressive small sample size Michael Carrick has provided so far in a way that, from my perspective, not really knowing the insides as maybe much as some United fans do, almost in a way feels accidental, perhaps, with the success, just because, I mean, he has been the third interim former player manager that they named. I don't fully understand the role or the communication with Fletcher being the initial one, didn't quite really have good results in that short time frame. And then, at least from my position, it was unclear. Okay, well, is Carrick now a replacement for Fletcher? Was he their first choice all along, and just the timing didn't work out until later on? But is interesting as that piece is to watch, also having another former legend in Roy Keane having a little bit of a public criticism and really not talking up the future potential of Michael Carrick as a manager is
Yeah.
interesting and unexpected to see. That was something I got to read up a little bit on their history this past
Honestly,
week, and it's
yeah.
a lot going on there.
Yeah. Yeah. First off, there's a lot of pundits, Man United pundits out there, especially on the other side of the pond, where all these
Yes.
games are played and the importance is even more magnified. Also, yeah, the Wikipedias on some of these Man United players, Rooney, Scholes, Giggs. I mean, yeah, it's all very interesting stuff. And there's a lot of toxicity. And not to make this comparison again, but it also reminds me of the Cowboys when there's a lot of visibility, there's a lot of punditry, there's a lot of glory age level thinking and reminiscence, and it's pretty toxic. And it's hard to break through that. It takes almost an iconoclast to reset that whole history or rewrite that whole history. I mean, I don't think Cristiano Ronaldo, player manager, is walking through that door just yet,
Well, the
even though
main
he is mad about
takeaway
Enzo.
I'm hearing is the suggestion Tony Romo needs to come back and coach the Cowboys. You
I would love
mentioned
that.
the Patriots' success, and it does have that tie-in of Mike Vrabel,
Vrabel.
former
Yep.
player, now
Yep.
kind of at the helm. Same with Carrick. So it sounds like Tony Romo's the next one to take the reins. Is moral of the story.
It is interesting, like even in the NFL and in the Premier League, there is that push and pull between the old school way, I think, of having like a player turn into a coach, right? Someone that's intimately familiar with not only the ins and outs of the games, but also what it takes to play the game at the highest level, what it takes to be a leader of men or be part of that leadership versus a conceptual savant, genius, or just a mix of the two. We see that on the EPL side. I mean, gotta say, watching Arteta, watching Carrick, right? Even Pep, if he was a player coach as well, and he had great success at Barcelona on the team that he is most well known for. So it is just it's just across sport, right? Do you have the player? Like some of the greats can't be coaches, so it takes a little bit of mediocrity to be a good coach at the same time, possibly, right? So yeah, it's just an observation, something fun to think about. What Spurs player would you want to see come back and coach for Spurs?
Gareth Bale initially comes to mind,
Yeah,
just as
to
someone
get off the golf
who,
course.
yeah, I think had that weird balance of multiple things going on, priorities going on in their life, and maybe feeling like one of those examples of a athlete that was a little laissez-faire in a way that they openly talked about how they maybe were not obsessed with the sport. So just as something different, that would be a really interesting one. From the tactical standpoint, I'd absolutely love to see Luka Modric have that.
Yeah, sure.
Unfortunately, he's probably playing another 20 years before we get to see him in that manager role. But it's hard to imagine his ideas not being exceptional in terms of how he has been able to view and read the game. The only other one that I feel would be an interesting hire would be Son, and just having someone as a former captain who, at least from what I've seen, has a little bit more humility than some of the elite players, and humility probably being a trait you don't hear to describe a lot of the top managers. Certainly, if you're thinking of the likes of Mourinho, Conte, Tuchel, just some of the otherworldly egos, I think it would be interesting to see someone with that level of humility as what Son has shown in his interviews and his role as a captain be in charge of a club of that size.
Yeah, I'll keep it in LA. I love those suggestions. This one probably wouldn't stick because you just don't see this position go into to the manager's box. But Lloris in LA too, right? I could see a Frenchman helming a Tottenham team and having that cachet and cultural identity with Spurs to maybe some success, but it is just weird thinking of a goalkeeping coach becoming a head coach. No shade, obviously, just it is an interesting aspect. Like in baseball, you have a catcher can see the whole field. We've seen some of those guys make it or at least be in the leadership role within the team, the captain, but Lloris, a captain in his own right, that would be an interesting one too. Okay, speaking of Tottenham, let's go across to the Manchester United rivals that they played, Man City Tottenham. Man, this game started off to be kind of scary for the rest of the league as far as Man City is concerned. This team is now built up a reputation. We'll get into the Carabao Cup a little bit later. This team has now built a reputation of being absolutely clinical, decisive, ruthless, especially with Holland on the field in the first half of these games. They had a 2-0 lead to Spurs. Spurs was getting booed at halftime. The performance was horrible, to say the least. In a lot of ways, they look discombobulated at sometimes, but this is Spurs. This is a Spurs that is a team of two halves sometimes. Is the worst of times, and then it becomes the best of times. At a certain point in this game, Daniel, I put a small amount of money, I'm talking $2, on Spurs win 4-2. I was just feeling it, like, hey, they could just keep going after that Solanke scorpion kick. I was like, this could be an epic destruction that the Spurs seem to be able to pull off against Manchester City ever so often. It's almost like cosmic justice, the Achilles heel. But I mean, you can hear the excitement in my voice talking about watching these two teams play, much less both give up points and have a absolute brawl. What were your thoughts on Man City 2, Spurs 2?
I think the biggest takeaway is just sometimes I think you forget with professional sports that are such a high level and just performed and executed in such a impressive way, how there still can be these massive shifts of emotion and momentum that you would see similar to, a much lower team at almost a youth setting, of how fluctuating it can be in terms of who's having success. And it did really feel the cliche of a tale of two halves in terms of how the performance looked. It's hard to say how much of it was maybe complacency from Man City after what was a really dominant, impressive statement they put out for the first 45 minutes versus, hey, this just does show their inexperience and their youth. One of the things that I was surprised to hear and watching them play this week was commentator mentioning that this has been the youngest side, if I heard correctly, that Pep Guardiola has ever had in terms of his Man City
Wow.
time frame, which was initially very surprising to hear. But then once you start to think about the players and go through the roster, there are a lot of that. Yeah, he is very young. He is very young. He is very young. And so that is, I think, one of the common critiques you hear of younger players is just that lack of professionalism in the ability to see out games, manage moments, manage situations. And it just did feel, not only in that game, but I know we'll talk about the Carabao Cup a little bit later, how susceptible at times that Man City backline can be. And I do think one of the big takeaways that I've just had through the recent play is maybe that a prime Ruben Diaz was a little bit underappreciated in that side. John Stones during his better moments a little bit maybe underappreciated in that side because it just really feels that the level of reliability from their defense, and I would put that on the center backs in particular, is not quite the same that it was in years past, was a big takeaway on my end. But the only other feeling was happy to see the fight from the Spurs players, just in the sense of someone who is a fan of Thomas Frank. I feel like he is a manager I enjoy
Yeah.
watching, listening to, does seem like a very good human being. So I was happy at least to feel that feedback in the sense that the players are still trying to push for him and still have belief in what he's trying to do rather than what could have easily been a game that 5-0, 6-0 might have a serious consideration about him still having a job the following week. That
Yeah.
was probably the biggest takeaway I would have from the Spurs, just that the players still would like to see Thomas Frank there another week at least.
And just to stay on Tottenham for a second, I mean, Man City, they're impressive. I think that you nailed it. They just let their foot off the gas a little bit, got caught out, and then the momentum flipped on them. Momentum is seeming to be more and more relevant in sport. But for Tottenham, we see this in clubs where they just rotate through these managers, right? Even Chelsea recently, Manchester United. I mean, both of these teams, Chelsea and Man United, are still undergoing this. Tottenham's undergoing this right now. And what I'm talking about is there is no cachet with the manager, right? And I've said cachet a lot this episode, but they almost see managers as never fully entering that door into being the boss. It may happen for a week, it may happen for a month, it may happen for half a season, it may even happen for a full season. I mean, Spurs made a Champions League final, right? So Spurs have somehow challenged in seasons in Europe when they've been poor domestically, and even sometimes vice versa. So it's almost discouraging in a way for a neutral to see some of these teams get caught in these cycles where they don't have coaches, they don't have managers that are trusted, that whether it be Maresca, whether it be, I'm not going to defend Big Ainge, but like, Mourinho, Pochettino, like these managers that you could see with some runway actually work out. And I know Man United just tried that, right? They tried to give the runway, and it didn't work out because of a stubborn manager that wanted to play in a back three in a system with Man United that's a blue collar, very direct, even with Bruno, very physical team. Even as someone that leans Arsenal, it does kind of hurt to see a team just absolutely have zero confidence in themselves, zero confidence in the manager. I mean, I just feel for some of these Tottenham players, and it feels strange to see it. If you put them all together in a team and put their kits on, I hope all the bad things happen to them on the pitch as far as losses and missed chances. But if you take it off and you just review some of these players, even like, dare I say, Romero, I mean, they've proven that they are elite players in some circumstances. And there's something about that Tottenham kit. It takes the greats, or it took a bygone era like in Bale or Kane or even Defoe, where they kind of still had a little bit of an identity that they could carry from season to season, build on, the fans believe in, and just give an actual challenge over the course of a year. And so I do feel for Tottenham fans. They have an amazing stadium. They play NFL games there now. But man, that place fills up, and it is just strange hearing absolute silence, much less boos, from that stadium in White Hart Lane, or whatever they call the new one. I think White Hart Lane was the old one. So, all right. Man City did drop some points there. It was 2-2. So that takes them 6 points behind Arsenal now. We will talk a little bit more about Arsenal. Not too much, though. Don't tune out later on the Carabao Cup. But Arsenal leads 4-0. There were some questions, Daniel, if Leeds were going to park the bus and try to see if they could have Arsenal bring out Owen goal from the bench and keep this dream alive to win a Premier League title. Or maybe they could, be luckier than Wolves and actually pull off a win against Arsenal by playing more defensive, by using some of the dark arts against Arsenal themselves. It turned out that wasn't the case. Leeds was a little bit more open. They got a little bit battered in the first half, and then we saw Eze and Jesus come on, and then just kind of turned into a thrashing with even Yorkes getting on the score sheet, Zubamendi making up for his mistake last week, and maybe his eyes and hopefully in his confidence. Arsenal go on to beat Leeds 4-0. Any takeaways from you outside looking in on the response Arsenal made, the addition to their goal differential tally, and maybe the momentum they want to build going into this third quarter of the season?
I definitely liked the Victor Gyökeres finish in terms of that game, but I think the takeaways were, one, just that a really talented team that maybe does have that youth and inexperience in terms of pushing for a title was able to not feel as much pressure as what could have been the case in terms of some of the recent lapses from Man City, Aston Villa, and the other clubs trying to push for a potential, title race. So I think it showed how good Arsenal can be when they aren't feeling those moments of pressure. And the other, just really obvious, I thought, game state was when a team tries to play with energy, play with physicality, play with athleticism, that this current level of Arsenal seems to really focus on, that Arsenal is going to win that matchup. And really just allows them to compare kind of a similar style in some ways that I thought Leeds tried to present. And by trying to almost have that, similar game plan and similar ideology in the styles of play, really allowed Arsenal's players to shine as the best version of that in the world right now. I think in terms of that high level of competitiveness, extreme intensity in terms of all phases of the game, playing at a high level of speed in transition, very physical in terms of any defensive transition moments, and two teams just kind of battling it out in that way had more and more moments of the Arsenal quality to where Leeds just continued to get broken down by a superior team. So if I was an Arsenal fan, it would certainly be a huge boost to my confidence in what the rest of the year can look like. And you just hope that that team is able to continue to show the moments where they're able to represent themselves best and not some of the moments that have been seen in the past of them starting to feel those nervy moments and underachieve through the pressure, or if it's a team playing in a style that maybe doesn't suit Arsenal and is not a good matchup for their strengths, team maybe playing a little bit more of a low block and sitting off, not always being something that Arsenal's been able to solve with a lot of those 0-0 type results in the recent Premier League games leading up to this.
Yeah.
You just hope that Arsenal's able to continue to find those moments if you're a fan where they're able to show themselves how they were in this game, because it was a really, really impressive performance for what they can do for the rest of the season.
Yeah. Um, it's something that if they are going to make this title run, they need to take advantage of weekends like last weekend where Man City drops points. Man United gained points, they get into fourth, but Aston Villa, the villains, they had a shock 1-0 loss to a 10-man Brentford. This was a little bit earlier of a game. I'm not sure how much you caught of this. Aston Villa kind of in a little bit of a skid here. Same with Man City, outside of the Carabao Cup with their absolute drumming that we'll get into just briefly here in a little bit. But Aston Villa kind of finds himself in a circumstance now where they're still in it. There's no doubt about that. And I think that they do have some belief that they can turn this around. I'm not sure where I put them as far as odds on overtaking Arsenal, overtaking Man City, getting overtaken by Man United. But this team is a very dangerous team. They almost just got their belief taken back or taken down just a notch after that last loss to Arsenal. I think that, again, speaks to that momentum piece of it. But I don't know if you had many thoughts on the Aston Villa-Brentford game, the 1-0 loss. Brentford also got a red card. They were down to 10 men in this, and it seemed like that shook Aston Villa even more to their core. Any thoughts on that?
Just that it does feel like Aston Villa is a little bit coming back down to earth and matching a little bit more of their statistical outputs. They were one of the teams that was definitely overachieving relative to the rest of the league. If you looked at their expected goals in a lot of the early matches in the fall. And I think through really good coaching, through some really focused players, they were able to maximize those situations and kind of be a surprise team. But feels to me a lot more likely that they're going to be in that battle with Man United, maybe Chelsea, Liverpool as well, for who's going to end up in the top four rather than really giving any push to actually challenge Arsenal or Man City for a title run.
Yeah, it's possible. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt because it wasn't too long ago. They were pretty much a bona fide top four, top three team. But I agree, they were playing a little bit out of their boots, as they say, across the pond. And um, it's still a long season. All they have to do is get that belief back into it, stay healthy, and they could definitely be in this. All right, Chelsea, ups and downs, new manager. About to go to break here. I'm looking ahead the weekend. I think that we can also kind of take that after the break as well. But it's a team that we haven't really talked to about a lot, and we haven't really showed them the proper respect. So before we get out of here, I think they deserve to stay in the first block. I think there's a little bit of ball disbelief going on in the Premier League this year with Pep and with Slot. And so let's bring in the reigning champions, not champions, like Premier League champions is what I meant to say. Let's bring in Liverpool. Let's bring in this team that has had some emotional ups and some very, very low emotional downs before the season even started. They also brought in a lot of new players, which we know may shake a little bit of that strong foundation that a certain German manager laid out for a certain Dutch manager that may have led to some of the success. But hey, with all times, with some of these iconic franchises, for lack of a better word, a franchise that has had its down periods, but has been pretty rock solid and pretty feisty for a long time. A team that has challenged Man City at a lot of these turns. That really it took almost a perfect season for Man City to beat them in a Premier League race not too long ago. It is Liverpool. They deserve our respect. They deserve our time. I have been a huge fan of Ekatike this year. That's really my main takeaway. Like without him, where would they be? Probably nowhere. Probably begging Darwin Nunez to come back and forgo the Saudi money. But Daniel, what are your thoughts about Liverpool? Anything interesting? Anything that you could just see start a glimmer of hope in this team?
I think we all hope to never be in a position to be begging Darwin Nunez in our lives. That's something we can all aspire to.
Austin FC is looking for a designated player, so
I would
yeah.
love to see him in the MLS. I actually think that'd be a great addition for an MLS club. It's going to be hard to turn down the money that he's currently getting, but it would really be an interesting one to see and does get him closer to the Americas. I'm also going to share the same appreciation in terms of Ekatike. I think he's been a really bright and fun player to watch for me as a guy that
World Cup?
he'll certainly play. I think that role is to be determined in terms of positional, and I would imagine he's certainly coming off the bench rather than starting in that squad. But he was a guy that in the signing was really kind of questioned in terms of, well, does this mean they're foregoing the Isak purchase? Or when that did finally happen, okay, well, is he meant to back Isak up or how is this going to work? And is a guy that just has really made the most of a lot of the opportunities he's had. I think he's shown a really dangerous ability to come and check into space off that forward line, quickly look to link up, get other players involved, and then run behind. And does that in a way that is explosive, clean, and brings a lot of energy into that team. And energy has really, I think, kind of been that foundation of success for the Liverpool players in terms of that identity that that club wants to have when they play and that success under Jurgen Klopp. So he's been one that's been really exciting to see if you are a Liverpool fan in terms of how he's been able to adapt. But with all those positives, it just doesn't seem to have clicked for so many of the other players. And the Salah Van Dijk successes, it felt like, in terms of their signings and getting those players to return to the club over heavy outside interest when those kind of free agency periods with Trent Alexander-Arnold all came about, those big moments of getting Salah and Van Dijk to return now do feel, I think, a little bit different in terms of, man, was it just one of those contract examples of having a guy who maybe is a little bit past his prime being rewarded for what they have done previously, but it just does feel like a big unexpected drop off for a lot of the players that earned a title last year, and I thought did look like the best team in the league last year,
For sure.
not having that, same quality now. So for whatever reason, whether it's manager, age, still difficult, lingering challenges of the Diego Jota situation.
Yeah.
It's hard to say what the factor is, but Liverpool, it just doesn't seem to be anywhere near a title challenging team that they certainly were last season.
Yeah, and they lost. They lost their big, big, big piece, right? They lost Isak. Is that what I said? Anyways, Isak, they lost him to a broken leg. I think scoring a goal, right? If I remember correctly. So it's just one of those years, and it's hard to repeat. I think there was just so much jubilation from last year. Also, a little bit of a let off before the season was even over. So they got to take a victory lap before the body was even buried for their competitors like Arsenal and Man City. I mean, it was a magical, magical year for them, and just followed by the polar opposite. I know that that team does have a lot of resilience. They will have to turn the page on a lot of these players, maybe not all at once, but gradually. And they should really, I think, what I'm seeing or what I'm hearing from some of my Liverpool people is they're going to embrace the Vertzes and the Ekatikes, and who even knows, maybe a certain Italian talisman on the bench, as much as they can to try to see who they can hold on to, who they can look forward to in the future. It almost reminds me a little bit, being a Dallas Mavericks fan, of Dirk. I'm watching Virgil van Dijk these days, like in his final years when the knees were gone and everything else. And honestly, Mavericks fans didn't care, right? Obviously, they're different players too. If Van Dijk was still scoring 20 goals a season, that would be a completely different story. But man, Dirk even scoring 19 a game, 20 something a game. I mean, when they do something, when they win you that championship, it really does buy a lot of love, and almost the fans don't want you to leave. It almost may be worth it to the fans to pay that money to see you to retire, even if that doesn't really happen in soccer, but retire in the kit. I mean, definitely you wouldn't want to see Virgil van Dijk play for Man City. Sorry, Crystal Palace fans. I just have to bring it up as a thing that, yeah, it's been a real reality, for lack of a better word, for that team, and all these different players going all over the place. But hey, that's how it works. All right, I digress. Let's take a quick break. Let's do quick predictions as far as the upcoming Premier League weekends, and then let's talk about that Carabao Cup and the final, the blockbuster final that's scheduled for Sunday, March 22nd. You listen to the Football Ball podcast. It's Daniel and Zach. We'll be right back after this message.
Football Ball.
All right, welcome back to the Football Ball podcast. It's still Mr.
Football
Stateside
Ball.
here along with Daniel. We just got done talking about the Matchweek recap for 24, the Carrick effect, all of our thoughts on that top 3, top 4, top 5, even top 6, what that is looking like moving forward, and how exciting really the season has been so far. It's just 6 points clear for Arsenal, a team that is famous at bottling leads. All right. Anyways, let's jump into some predictions here. Not getting too far into the bottling leads yet. We've got a long way to go before the end of the season. On Friday, February 6th, we've got Leeds, Nottingham Forest, 2 of the lower teams in the table, kind of fighting their way from relegation, though the relegation teams are making it pretty easy for them. Daniel, you got to lean on this one, Leeds versus Forest.
I'm going to say draw. I think Forest is okay with the point because they just want to be safe. And Leeds is in a weird spot trying to respond from the Arsenal beatdown. So 0-0, 1-1 type
Yeah.
scoreline.
Yep. And they both are sitting on 26 points. So that seems like something, it's almost like a gentleman's agreement. Hey, let's just get some points here and get out of here. All right, moving on to Saturday, February 7th. We're going to start it off with the aforementioned Spurs taking on the aforementioned Manchester United for the Royal Rumble in the which manager is going to get fired first duel. If you lose to Spurs, that's going to take a big hit on your legacy. If you beat Man United, you may buy yourself at least another season, hopefully. But Man United Spurs, I'm going to say the Man United train goes on, even if it is in an extra time winner. What about you, Daniel?
This is one of those that I could see any type of outcome not being surprising, but just for the drama, I do hope that Man United somehow gets the 3 points.
All right. Aston Villa, Bournemouth, taking on the other B team that's kind of scary. Aston Villa, maybe a bounce back here. I'll give them a 1-0. I think it's a cagey, tighter game that they may be able to out physical or at least soak up some of Bournemouth's pressure. What about you, guys?
I like it. Well, I'll take 1-0 as well. Sounds good.
Okay, Everton, Fulham, no idea what to expect from either one of these teams. I'd put it in a toss-up. Like, seriously, I could see this being 2 Fulham with an Everton red card. I could see it being 2 Fulham at half and 2-2 Everton at the end. What about you, Daniel?
I'm going to take 1-1. Just feels like 2 teams kind of staying out of the headlines for the moment.
Yeah. I think we can agree on Burnley, West Ham probably being another one of the point shares. We've got Wolves, Chelsea. I think Chelsea makes a bounce back there, but Probably two, or at least like the headliner as far as the top of the league relevance. We've got Arsenal, Sunderland. Sunderland spoiled Arsenal's season, it seemed like at one point. Granit Xhaka coming back for revenge. What do you think happens this time, Daniel?
I think easy Arsenal win with the key point being as you mentioned, Granit Xhaka will actually, as I understand, be out from an injury for this game. And he's one of those players that, as a former big piece of the previous Arsenal squad, one of those guys I think you never want to play against. Just feels like he would have had such a desire to prove them wrong that he should not have been a player that they moved on from. He did go on to have that big success in the Bundesliga, but it is certainly just a different tier now being back in the Premier League. And everyone, I think, kind of had some of those questions early on of was he still at that level? And he proved the answer to be yes, all for the first half of the season. But now has definitely, I think, been a part of them stalling a little bit as he's had some issues, some red cards, the injury lately, and just when he's not at his best, the team certainly is not high as level. So I think this will be another easy win for Arsenal at a time where they will appreciate not having to put that probably full mental energy and mental concentration and effort in this match to get the 3 points.
Yeah, but on the other hand, Sunderland, this is a very practical team too. This is a team that has a lot of belief coming up from the championship, belief in their coach, belief in Xhaka and some of their key players. A team that is tied 9 games, won 9 games. Only Brighton has more ties with 10. So a very practical team, a team that would be absolutely happy coming away with 1 points at the Emirates. So one to watch, could be a little cagey, but it could be similar to some other games we've seen Arsenal open up after getting some confidence from a set piece. All right, let's take a look. Newcastle, I don't even know what to talk about them. Newcastle, Brentford. So let's take a look to Sunday, February 8th. Crystal Brighton, whatever, no one cares, except for maybe a super loyal bartender at the Arsenal bar that somehow is a Brighton fan. But the big one, Daniel. We've already talked about these two teams. They're playing this weekend. This is the marquee game. This is a tale of two teams that have been absolute heavyweights over the last half a decade or so. It is Liverpool. It is Man City. It is at Anfield. You never walk alone here. This would be quite a statement for either team. It's very cliche to say. If Liverpool wins this, you could see maybe the end of an era for Man City, maybe a resurgence with Liverpool. I'm trying to at least command for a top 3 spot, top 2 spot, at least putting some pressure on Arsenal, as well as obviously Man City, Aston Villa, and Man United. If you see Man City winning this, this could be a statement game where they're letting everyone in the league know they're not just quite done yet. They've got a new defender and they've got a new winger, Semenyo, and they are ready to make a run for trophies. So Man City, Liverpool, for me, I'm going to go with a little bit of the former or the latter. I can't remember how that saying works. I always forget the moment. But I think Man City isn't on a little bit of a run. I think whenever you almost lose to Spurs, it's a near-death experience that abruptly wakes you up, gets your heart pumping, and resets the course of your life, if even in the short term. So I'm going to go with the comfortable one here. I think it is going to be probably 3-1 Man City over Liverpool. I think their defense solidifies a little bit. They'll get a little bit more comfortable possession, and I think that Donnarumma makes some big saves, as well as Ekitike inverts, stepping up for another connection, goal, and assist. What about you, Daniel? Do you agree with me, or do you see something else happening?
I think it's definitely something Donnarumma is capable of with those big saves. The only one quick point I do want to touch on, speaking of Crystal Palace, is I think the interesting transfer market updates that's been going on. If you haven't seen with I don't know if star is the right word, but it feels like it's the right word in terms of Jean-Philippe Mateta, their striker that has been a big part of them recently having the trophy, recently being a
Yeah.
team much higher up in the table. They have had some of those other high-profile attacking players recently get sold, move on, and it does kind of feel like with the departures of Eze and some of those other guys, Sar, that he's maybe the last one of that trio, potentially because his age is a little bit higher. And he was a guy, though, that was really kind of, I think, battling for a potential World Cup inclusion with the France squad as a legitimate, sub option as a different
They
type
love
of
their big
player.
strikers.
And certain games, and you make a great point of Giroud being France's best success in terms of being able to have that hold up type player. And he really was putting together, I think, a recent resume to legitimately include himself in that discussion and probably be a deserved pick within the France squad. Was making then a move to AC Milan as part of the exodus going on from that club. No one wanting to be the last one left on that burning ship. And for whatever reason, it seems like that transfer has fallen through at the last second. That's going to now seemingly put him in a situation where he is without a club for the remainder of the season. It is really, I mean, nearly impossible to just imagine him getting the France World Cup inclusion if he was to go February, March, April, June without being able to play any level of competitive soccer.
Oh,
So
yeah, no
one
chance.
really interesting story to see how that develops with Crystal Palace. But then I think in terms of the prediction for Man City Liverpool, I would hope to see some version of a 3-3 where both teams kind of show the high moments, the positives, the energetic attacking success and quality that they can have. My prediction is we're going to see Erling Haaland kind of break his recent drought, get back on the score sheet once, if not twice. I do think he's probably going to end up scoring 2 goals based just on
Ugh.
how confident that he looked in the recent warm up coming on as a sub in the Carabao Cup. It was just a reminder of how confident he is that elite striker, elite finisher mentality, where a lot of times you would expect a player to emotionally maybe look a little uncertain and, not the most confident self when they are having the camera on them, warming up, about to come on as a sub. His level of, yeah, just how he presented himself, let you know that he's going to start scoring again, I think, as soon as possible. I think you have seen more moments of Wirtz start to show his attacking impact that you talked about earlier. But the one weakness of both sides at the moment is definitely have to be their defense. And in different sides of the coin, really, with Liverpool's now starting to seem old, a little rigid, lacking mobility in a lot of the goals that they've been conceding lately. And a lot of the pundits, whether it's, fair or not, starting to kind of ask some questions about the age of Van Dijk, about the age of the center back partner in Konate, and are these guys past the prime? Some of their previous key performers, like Robertson, is now not even a regular starter, but more of a substitute role. So it just does feel like more of an aged back line that started to be a weakness of Liverpool, where Man City has the opposite end of guys that are extremely young, have come from less competitive leagues where they were top players, now trying to have that success in the Premier League and having some challenges on a regular basis in terms of their youth and inexperience. So that is just that opposite kind of difficult challenge that Man City seems to be facing at the moment. And because of that, I would like to see a high scoring, but ultimately draw in the end of a 3-3.
Yeah, I could see it. I mean, I could see them being up 2 at half and giving up some to Liverpool, and then it being kind of a nervy last 15 minutes where one scores a goal and the other one scores in close to stoppage time. So totally makes sense to me. It really does seem to lean on that defense. We've talked about it in previous episodes. If they get healthy on defense, they have the absolute perfect makeup for the kind of type of football they want to play these days, which is more direct, which is maybe a little bit more transactional as far as possessive. And they've got a heck of a shot stopper, I should say, in Donnarumma. All right, 3-3 for that team. That would essentially, with those predictions, seem to put Arsenal 8 points ahead. So sounds good to me. Speaking of Arsenal, speaking of Man City, we've done a lot of analysis already on these two teams, specifically over the last 2 weeks. We think that these are two teams that may have the potential to be the ones holding the trophy at the end of the season. Daniel is leaning towards Arsenal. I am finding myself leaning towards Man City. It seems almost like a blockbuster movie matchup that we've got coming for this final of the Carabao Cup on Sunday, March 22nd. Something like Pep Guardiola plays Freddy Krueger on A Nightmare on Elm Street, and Mikel Arteta plays Bill Murray in Ghostbusters. Which movie would you want to see? Which movie would get your nod from a critic's perspective, from a fan's perspective? Also, there's a little bit of a theme there with Man City just refusing to go away. I think that Pep Guardiola has won this trophy 4 times in his career, tied with Sir Alex Ferguson, Jose Mourinho, and some other greats as well. Arsenal has not won this trophy, I believe, since the 90s. They have been in here, and I believe that they lost to Birmingham or Wigan or somebody back in 2011, on top of maybe some other losses too. So this has seen, and I've seen the Athletic report this as well, this specific competition has seemed to be a jump board for teams that want to win the Premier League title for the first time with their coach. This is seen as an early piece of hardware, an early competition that for some coaches in the past, like Arsene Wenger, was used more as a developmental challenge where they could play some of these younger players, get them time, see how they interact with the speed, the physicality of the Premier League. But as everything has now found its way on the TV, thank God, being stateside over here, these cups now have a little bit more heft, even if it's tongue-in-cheek when it comes to the Carabao Cup versus the other domestic titles like the FA or the Premier League. Much less the Champions League, pardon me, much less the Champions League or much less domestic international competitions. I mean, this is a cup that seemed to be a little bit of a confidence and momentum builder when it comes to teams that want to close it out. If you're going to get a quadruple or a treble, you do, for the most part, have to start with the Carabao Cup, the League Cup. So for me, this is something that is seeming to come into a must-win for Arsenal. I don't see that same type of pressure on Man City, which makes me believe Man City is possibly the team. I know they have the coach, but is possibly the team that has less pressure on them to win this, that seems like they could make a statement. There is not even a low-key rivalry, maybe not with these coaches, but with these teams, especially if Miles Lewis-Skelly and Erling Haaland are going to be on the same pitch and maybe even each score a goal. That would be absolute cinema. So this seems like a heavyweight matchup. This seems like a cup final that is going to live up to the billing of being a cup final, regardless of the title on the cup. I could see in these congested schedules moving into March, not only are we in a race for the Premier League, not only are we in a race to make the semifinals and the final of the Champions League and the FA Cup, but now we also have this little treat on the side that may find its way into the main course. It is the Carabao Chaos. Arsenal taking on Man City at Wembley. Full kits, I'm sure. I mean, full squad, I should say, of the best players. Daniel, let's not make our prediction just yet. Do you agree with me? This is an exciting one. This is one that I'm really looking forward to, and it's still over, 2-3 months away.
I think it is going to be an exciting final. It is one you kind of almost wish would be happening a little bit sooner, just off the storylines of the semifinals for both teams. It does feel like it is going to be an important one for both clubs, but I do think for different reasons. Just seeing the Arsenal center backs celebrate at the end of the match against Chelsea was really clear of how much it did mean to this group in terms of looking to achieve another trophy. And it was a little bit of a surprising reminder that it just really has been the lone FA Cup in 2020 that's been really the only hardware for the club. It just felt maybe like it was more recent in my mind, or that they just, I don't know, had a little bit more success, but it is one of those reminders of, I mean, yeah, this is a chance for them to kind of prove and show more of the quality that, they, I think, have a very high internal belief of what this Arsenal squad is. And it just shows that I think the group really wants to show it. Where, from Man City's perspective, almost feels like, I think, to me, that maybe Man City does feel like the Premier League title might be a little bit too much of a challenge for where their team is from a consistency standpoint. And I think they are maybe almost shifting the focus to, well, let's just show that we can win a single game rather than have a long run of consistent high achieving form, and being able to win a trophy, even a League Cup, is, I think, a little bit of validation for a younger group that I know is going to be hungry to show they deserve to be at Man City. They deserve to be at the club that has been at the top tier, the Premier League in the world for the last decade or so, and want to show that they can continue that legacy in terms of their performance. I think that an opportunity to win a trophy is going to be some validation for what probably is going to be ultimately a season of underachievement and not having too many other chances to lift a trophy for the Man City team.
Yeah, fair enough. Ultimately, can't wait to watch it. No prediction here. I think it could really go
I'm
anyway, but
taking 1-1, and then I
okay.
see Arsenal winning it in penalties, which is going to be the outcome that does provide the least amount of relief possible for Arsenal, and is going to continue to make their season as nervy as possible. But I do think it is going to be the second piece of silverware lifted in the Arteta era
Mm, love
after
it.
penalty kick victory.
If they win that in penalty kicks, with Saka being the anchor, that would be something to behold, and I would believe almost anything is possible. We're going to Mars. Right. Well, Football Ball Podcast is wrapping up here. I think we can both agree it's been a super exciting season. I know the scoring is a little bit down. The defense is a little bit better. It's a little more physical. AR, as always, has its controversies, but overall, it's still a close season. There's still a lot of great storylines. There's a lot of great teams. There's a lot of parity, and we have been enjoying every minute. And we've got another exciting weekend coming up. We'll have to pod. There is rumor that we're going to have a Manchester United corner, so hopefully the wins keep coming so we can hear an elated Man United fan next week. But until next time, this is the Football Ball Podcast. Check us out at Football Ball on Twitter and Instagram, the Football Ball Podcast on YouTube as well. If you're still listening, then you probably already know this, but we appreciate you. We love you. And until next time, keep your kicks high and your training sessions optional. Peace. Later.
Football Ball. Football Ball. Football Ball.